Well, I came on a Pan Am flight when I was 7 years old, so I'm one of the youngest. There are some younger, but I haven't met many younger than I. I'm going to work my way through this PowerPoint presentation, and of course we don't read PowerPoint, right? It's a terrible thing to do, but try to add some depth and some insight to the PowerPoint. There are several topics we're going to cover in the PowerPoint. First, kind of a description, a general overview of Cuba in 1958, prior to the Castro Revolution. The idea of patria potestad, that is where the state asserted sovereignty over children. Cuba, in the early period of the revolution between 1958 in terms of volume, although the volume was pretty similar to the number of children who were moved out of Nazi-occupied areas in the 1930s and 40s in an operation known as Kinder Transport. There's roughly 14,000, 15,000 Jewish children who were saved probably from annihilation by being moved to England and other places. It began at the end of 1960 and ended with the Cuban Missile Crisis in October of '62, so just right around 2 years. The Cuban Missile Crisis halted commercial air service between Cuba and the U.S. In total, 14,048 unaccompanied Cuban minors arrived in the U.S. under the sponsorship of the Catholic Welfare Bureau. Francisco Firmat Frank is a retired judge of the Orange County Superior Court, himself a Pedro and a good friend and a very honorable person.
Me not speak English, not so good. There's a time when I spoke that way. Thank God I've gotten better. How many of you here are Pedro Pans? Raise your hand. Okay, so if any of you want to chat with a real life Pedro Pan later on, catch one of these folks. How many of you had never heard of Pedro Pan before today? Raise your hand. Okay. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I was a judge for 27 years in Orange County Superior Court. I retired 6 years ago. Right at the age of 11. I had a little sign right here on my shirt. My name is Francisco Firmat. I don't speak English. Make sure I arrive at St. Vincent's Home for Boys Catholic Orphanage in Denver, Colorado. And that's the way I was sent from Florida to an orphanage in Denver. There were so many Cuban children arriving in Florida, there was no room for us. So they started shipping us to orphanages all over the country, and so I ended up in Denver. An immigrant kid, learned English quickly, writing at the age of 11. And then, you know, the immigrant story, you work hard. When I was in high school, I lived, later on we moved to California after 5 years in Colorado. I was in the orphanage for a few months, and my parents were able to arrive. And after 5 years, we came to California because we were from the Caribbean, you see. And in Colorado, we got snow. And we could take it for 5 years, but no more than 5. My parents couldn't. We could. That was fun. Snow was fun. We came to California, lived in Alhambra. And I remember being the immigrant kid. At 6 o'clock in the morning, I checked into a restaurant that was two blocks away from the high school. And I worked from 6 a.m. to 8 o'clock in the morning. At 8 o'clock in the morning, I walked 2 blocks to high school. At 2:30 in the afternoon, I walked back to the restaurant and worked from 2:30 to 5. Went home, did my homework, and then Saturdays and Sundays, I had 8-hour shifts at the restaurant. The life of the immigrant kid. And you know, you work your way through college, you become a lawyer, and this is a great country where an immigrant kid can become a judge. And for that, I'm very grateful. Like Andy Garcia said, this is a great country. It's been kind to immigrants. It's a nation of immigrants. And for that, we are all the Pedro extraordinarily grateful. Idea to start this program, and you know, like all great programs, they start small, they start ground root. And he set in motion this program. He was a headmaster, and he made some contacts with people in the Cuban underground, and he tried to get scholarships for kids in the United States. And what they found out was that what made more sense is to simply get the kids out. And once they got the cooperation of the U.S. State Department, they started doing that. Next slide. Mr. Baker met with Father Walsh and discovered that Father Walsh in the United States was seeking a similar solution to the problem of the Cuban kids. Parents who wanted to send their kids out of the island but were just didn't know how to do it. And so December 15, an embassy pouch arrived in Miami, and December 26 of 1960, the first Cuban children arrived under this program. And 14,000 kids arrived this way. Now, what the Cuban government thought was happening was Cuban parents were sending their children to the United States to spend a few weeks with relatives. And so every time a Pan Am flight left, there was 1, 2, 3, 10, 12 children leaving. What they never noticed was when the planes came back from the United States, the planes never came with any children returning from those 2 or 3 week trips to visit relatives. And so this caught the Cuban government by surprise when they realized later on 14,000 of our children have been sent away. All our plans to indoctrinate all of these children and have these children be the leaders of Cuba tomorrow were foiled at 14,000 times.